You're listening to Pole Parlour, a fun, inspiring podcast for all those bewitched by pole dance. Each week, your Madam Crimson Minxxx has candid conversation with unique, engaging individuals from within and around the pole dance community. Pole Parlour is passionate about preaching creativity, soulful sensuality, and empowerment through pole dance.
You know how we do.
Welcome everyone to Pole Parlour. This is episode 49, Lisa D. I'm your host, Crimson Minxxx. This week on the podcast, we have Aussie pole dancer, performer, and coach, Lisa D. On this episode, we talk about how Lisa became enchanted with pole, witnessing the stage charisma of women she danced with during her early days working at a strip club, how she transitioned from a master's program to being a full-time pole professional, the importance of understanding and embracing your personal style as a dancer, and the value of finding balance in the pole industry. Also, don't forget to check out Lisa's post-podcast interview on the blog at poleparlour.com, where she shares her favorite photos, music, video, and more. And if you're digging these episodes, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and or iTunes. And if you're in a particularly rad mood, please leave a review on iTunes so we can get better rankings and reach more people and eventually take over the world. So now, here's Lisa.
Holy shit.
Slow down, grab the wall, wiggle like you're trying to make your ass fall off. Hella thick, I wanna
Welcome, Lisa D, to the Pole Parlour podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. Hi. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Oh, doing well. Thank you so much for being with us. We're excited to talk.
I'm excited. Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's jump on in. For how long have you been pole dancing, and how did you first discover pole?
I've been going since 2001 or so. So what's that? 15 or 16 years.
Yeah.
But there have been some long gaps in there, like between 2002 and 2005. I actually didn't do any polling. So that was a long gap. And there was another gap in between 2008 and 9 sometime for injury. So anyway, there's been a few years of gaps around there. So I don't know, something like 12 years in.
Still a lot.
Yeah, or maybe 13 if you add it all up. And I started polling because I was a stripper years ago in 2001. I got into it because I was working as a bartender in a wine bar. It was a really nice place, and I was working with a guy who was fairly serious in the sommelier kind of sense about his wines. So I was learning a lot about wines, but the pay was, whatever it was, $12 an hour cash in hand, which in Australia is, I know base level of pay is different all around the world, but in Australia it's not terribly good. And after work at nights, one of the only places that would be open near us was a strip club, because we would finish up at around midnight at the wine bar, and it wasn't a very busy area of town. So the only other thing that was open was a strip club after midnight. So we would go in for after work drinks at the strippers and hang about. And after going in a couple of times and just watching the girls dance on stage, I thought, look, I reckon I can do that. And one of them came off stage and I was like, hi, how much do you make per hour? She said, on a slow night, I make about $50 an hour cash. And I was making $12 an hour cash, standing on my feet all night, getting just as smelly with cigarette smoke and having to pour drinks all night. So getting splashed with beer and coffee all night and going home stinking. Hospitality work can make you pretty smelly.
Did it for a very long time. Yes, I know.
Yeah. And so I literally went, that's great, thanks, and walked up to the reception desk and said, I'm going to start dancing here. And they said, all right, come in tomorrow night. And so I did, and that was it. That was completely it.
Well, that's an
no
easy
training.
interview process, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think back in the day before YouTube and all that, getting into exotic dancing was not, I don't know I have no idea how it is now if you have audition processes or something like that, but really they just said, very good, come back tomorrow at 7:00 and you can start. And they gave me a short induction, but the induction was like, here are the toilets, that's the stage, here's the bar, here are some house rules. On your third shift, you have to get on stage, the end.
Wow. And so like what was, I'm assuming it's just like a typical club in Australia. So I forgot to mention before, you're in Melbourne. I don't know if this was happening in Melbourne. But
Brisbane,
so like
it was.
Oh, Brisbane. Okay. So when you started working at this club, there was a pole, I assume, and then was there also like the private dance rooms, then you had to do a stage performance, so it was like a mixture of both? And
the way it operated there is there were two poles on a catwalk style stage.
Okay.
The back of the stage was a small rectangular stage with a catwalk leading away from it through the middle of the club floor onto a small podium stage at the front. So a long catwalk with one pole at either end. And that was really fun. That was my favorite. That was just my favorite thing. I wasn't uncomfortable on stage. I was nervous to go up the first time, but I've always loved to dance, like crazy loved to dance. It just wasn't a problem. I was just like, yeah, it's my turn. And then I got up. I'm nervous, but also totally fine. I wasn't, I don't know, I wasn't worried about the judgment of the men in the club on whether I was good or not. I just thought, I'm going to make at least $50 an hour, whether they like me or not. There was private dance room. At that place, there was one big room. One big room with couches. It's a long time ago now, so it's like 15 years ago. But there was a big room with couches lining the walls all the way around, like one long leather bench kind of couch. Okay. So when you were giving a dance, you could see everyone else around you giving their dances. It was like a big room of dancers. Yeah. Okay. And a bar, like a regular bar, as in serving booze. And that was the whole setup. Dressing room. The dressing rooms were nice. We had, heaters and hair dryers and hair curlers and straighteners and stuff for us to use. So it was a fairly swanky one. Yeah, it was good.
Cool. Was it full nude or topless or?
It actually shifted from topless to full nude when I'd been there for about 6 months. There was some I don't know what it was, whether it was a legislation change or whether that club bought or was granted a higher level of license, a higher level entertainment nightclub license. So, after I'd been there for about 6 months, it went from topless or G-string topless to full nude. But the rules about contact didn't change, so that was still fine, yeah.
And were there, like, girls there that were good on the pole? Is that, like, did you see that pole and you were like, yeah, that, I'm going to do stuff on that thing? I didn't see any tricks more advanced than a Hello Boys, where you sit on your own fist and open your legs, or some basics upright spins, or a lay back, where you sit on the pole and you lay back. So those were the most advanced tricks I saw. But there are some girls who had a huge amount of stage charisma, like you know what I mean, just that indescribable stage charisma. So the level of pole, I saw the level of pole and I was like, sweet, I'm going to do that. And then I got quite bored pretty quickly dancing, and I was like, okay, now I'm just going to make stuff up forever. And so I began just making stuff up, like during my shift when I'm supposed to be on stage doing my 3 songs of dancing. I'm like, all right, what if I try this? What if I try that? Oh yeah, the customers. Eye contact. Okay, what if I try this? But what I loved was the girls with stage charisma. More than seeing tricks, it was seeing their stage presence that was a learning experience for me. Yeah, I could imagine, because I mean, you're there to get paid, not to learn how to like outside leg hang. So they were doing their job correctly.
Yeah. Oh, and they were amazing. Wow. There were a couple of girls I can still remember quite clearly, and I haven't spoken to them since that time. But there's a couple in particular I can remember quite clearly how they looked on stage, and just thinking their charisma and their presence was just, I want that for myself. Yeah, that was a big learning experience.
Yeah, that's a really cool early influence to carry over, or to like be even cognizant of, you know? How did you transfer then? What were the next steps that got you from that to starting to compete and getting to the actual pole dancing from stripping?
I went after that. So I stopped. I danced for 12 months, but stopped because I couldn't handle the clientele. Like I'm a relatively sensitive. I'm not saying no. It's not that I'm more sensitive than other people. I am too sensitive, I guess, in some ways. Like I couldn't handle the clientele. I couldn't brush it off easily enough. Like some of the bulk of the clientele were just shitty people, basically. And I don't think club goers are shitty people. I think the bulk of the guys I happened to meet were shitty people. And this is pre-internet. In those days, now there seems to be, we have a large and public movement surrounding how you treat people at their work, whether their work is in a strip club or in a supermarket. We have a large and public movement around how you treat people. Without the internet being as big a deal then as it was now, and without a gajillion blogs and opinion pieces on slut shaming and whorephobia and all this kind of thing, people treated you not so great, and they got away with it completely. You couldn't go onto Facebook the next day and name and shame. Yeah. You just had the men in those days, they treated women who worked in any aspect of the sex industry like people who didn't matter. And the realization just hit me over and over and over again. I mean, I don't care exactly if someone individually treats me like I don't matter. That's their fucking loss. Like, that's on them. But what did matter is the realization that as a very young woman, the people who operate the mechanics of the world around me, the movers and shakers, the power players, the people who run the show are these men. It's them. And now I know what they're like inside. How can I live? How can I live and be happy in a world run by those fuckers? That's what did me in. It's not some guy going, oh, you got small tits, yuck. It's the fact that that grown man in his early 50s runs the world and I have to live in it. And it just fucking did my head in, and I had to leave eventually or crumble and die and not feel like I would have a place in the world that's run by those morons.
That's a great way
anyway.
to put it. I don't think that it's funny when you said that. I was like, I just feel like, knowing Lisa a little bit that I do just, through online, I was like, I don't think she's sensitive. I think that you do not like putting up with bullshit.
But but I don't like putting up with bullshit because it makes me so sad and upset. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and because I am sensitive, like it hits me hard. Yeah. And then I think, well, I can't live with this. And then, well, what do? You got to live with it. So, yeah. So I moved on and moved to Japan for 18 months to teach English. Didn't do any dancing over there. In hindsight, maybe I should have because, the money. But I didn't. So I taught English, came back, and then my mum told me that, so now when I came back, it was like 2004 or so, I think. Okay. And my mum said, whoa, did you know pole dancing is this thing that they do in gyms now? Oh, my God, it's a new fitness craze. So I found it in a gym. Nice. And was like, hooray, it's now in a gym. I can do all the pole dancing without any of the guys. And within a month of ending up at that gym, the woman who ran the pole studio there asked me if I wanted to manage it and then if I wanted to take it over because she had to go back to America. Her visa was up. She had to go back to America. So I inherited this pole studio.
No way.
Yes way.
That's crazy.
And I grew it from there.
Is that where you still are today?
Oh, no. That place, no.
That was
I have no idea. Yeah, I have no idea what's happened with that place or even if the gym still exists. Yes, I was there until 2008 and then I moved to Melbourne. Yeah. Okay. And I ran it, I built it up as much as I could, but I was doing university at the same time. Like I decided to go to uni. So I was doing university at the same time and then I wanted to do a master's program in Melbourne. So I moved to Melbourne in early 2009 to do the master's program and left the gym behind.
What was your master's program in?
Translation German to English.
Wow, that's very specific. Do you still do that?
No, I did that. I did the master's for a year and then went, fuck it, I want to be a pole dancer after all, and just And I didn't stop pole dancing that whole time, but
Okay.
I was like, let's be sensible. Running a pole business is tough. Because after the gym, I was like, yeah, running a pole business is really tough.
Especially at that time.
Yeah, I was studying German at uni at the same time. Yes, especially at that time, because there was not a lot of pole dancing around in Australia. So it was hard to get customers and so I thought I'll be sensible and I'll get a straight job. Did almost a year of the masters, which was like a 2-year masters all up, and said, "Ta-ha! No, pole dancing it is," and quit the masters, and that's it, and just jumped straight back in, and didn't look back, kind of.
Yeah, well, you said you liked it when you were at the strip club. You just loved being on stage, so like that doesn't go away, even though the clients sucked. There was still that desire to be on stage. So that's cool that you found like a more positive way to do that.
Yeah. And these days we've got, there are lots of opportunities to get your sexy on stage in front of a super supportive pole audience, which is like paradise.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that insane?
Ah.
Like, you kind of get the best of both worlds. So maybe it doesn't pay as well, but maybe we'll figure that out as we go on.
Yeah. Yeah. Because women's sports and entertainment make so much money.
Right? I know. We talk about that a lot, of how pro athletes, I think Michelle Shimmy was saying how she had reached out to Red Bull and was like, you could be one of the first companies to support a female athlete in a female dominated sport, and they're like, nah. So
yeah,
we're
they're
still
like, thanks, no
it.
thanks, love. Yeah.
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 We're working on it. You were one of the people that are, kind of pioneering things, and you have been, when you look at your credentials, like your competition list and your performance list and just your experience on stage and pole is so extensive. So how did you start getting into the performing and making a name for yourself?
So I was running that studio out of the gym, and just kind of plugging away with that from 2005 to late 2008. And I actually didn't realize there were such a thing as pole competitions. I knew there were strip competitions and club comps. I knew about those, but I had never entered one. But then in early 2008, I got an email from the organisers of Miss Pole Dance Queensland. Queensland is the state that Brisbane is in. Miss Pole Dance Queensland calling for entrants and judges. And so I thought, oh, look, a pole competition, I'll do it. Yeah. So I did. So I built myself a routine to a Gillian Welsh song called Revelator, which is just so beautiful, and entered Miss Pole Queensland and won. So that was nice. And that's how I got into it all.
Wow. And then you were hooked. Yeah.
And then I was hooked, yeah. So I went through to the Nationals and did Miss Pole Dance Australia. I've done a few Miss Pole Dance Australias, and that was my first one in 2008. And I did it barefoot.
In Australia? Miss Pole Dance Australia. What a renegade.
I know. I was a barefoot dancer. By that time, I had left the shoes and gone barefoot. So I really wanted to do it barefoot. Cool. So I did. Or I did it in little ballet flats, actually. Okay. Well, not ballet flats, yeah, little ballet shoes. Yeah, and that's how I got into the whole thing. And once you're in, it's easier to stay in than it is to get in, if you know what I mean. Yes. Like for people, yeah. So once I was in, I just kept rolling and applying for competitions and applying and competing and applying and.
So is that the point when you were like, okay, I'm going to be you dropped out of school or dropped out of the master's program just to focus on the pole. Were you traveling a lot? Were you teaching workshops? Like, what was the life like then? How did you kind of manage to?
So I dropped out of the master's program, but I had moved interstate for that. So I no longer had a studio locate. I was no longer managing a studio to make money for me. So that was gone now. So I got a job as a closed captioner, someone who puts subtitles on television. So I was working in an office in 2009 and 10 and 11 and 12, no, 9, not 10, 2010 to 12, 2009 to 13, something in those years. It was a few years, like 3. So I was working in an office putting subtitles on television. I kind of got that job because I'd been studying translation, and there's a bit of subtitling. You learn how to subtitle, to some extent when you're studying translation. So that enabled me to get that weird little job. So that's how I was making money in the earlier years, as like 2008, 9, 10, 11, of competing. And then I was getting more teaching work with Paul. So then as I built up the teaching work and as opportunities started to come, like teaching at camps and on cruises and stuff like that, I gave up the office job. So it kind of, crossed over like that. And yeah. So I had the office job, and then as Paul built up in terms of the money it could make, I gave up the office job.
Nice. I mean, it's like a slow transition until you could make it work. It's a smart way to do it. So like,
I don't think I had another choice, because in 2008 and 9 in Melbourne, Australia, there weren't a lot of teaching positions even open, and I didn't want to run another studio. I knew that. I was like, so it had to be teaching work.
Gotcha. And so like you traveled, what was your experience like once you went full time? Like, how did you make that work? Was it just traveling a lot? Was it a lot of workshops or?
So it's, so I don't travel a lot. I workshop a little bit. So I workshop a relatively good amount. Workshops make some good money for pole dancers. So although it's not as good as it seems, like I've heard students go, oh my God, that workshop is $70. But when you think about it, the person coming to you to teach your workshop has left if they've got regular teaching work at their home studio, they've left that behind. They've traveled, and even if the hosting studio is paying for your travel, you still travel away from your regular work. So you're losing money on your regular work to go and teach workshops. So it costs you money to teach workshops.
Yeah.
But workshops make good money. So I teach as many of those as I can.
Yeah.
Last year I did a massive tour of Europe, which was lovely. But I don't think I'll ever do a tour that big again. I'll keep them smaller from now on. So more like 1 week at a time, because I don't like being away from home as much as some people do. I prefer just being at home.
People do it like that, all like the constant traveling. And we've talked to a lot of people on the podcast who are on the road at least 50% of the year. You have to like that lifestyle, it's a big sacrifice.
Yeah, but it's a lifestyle choice.
Yes.
It's a lifestyle thing.
Yeah.
And most of my life revolves around the studio I teach at, which is Bottoms Up in Brunswick. So most of my life revolves around the studio. I know. So I'm there 6 days a week.
Oh, wow.
Either teaching or training, or a combo of both, or doing privates. Teaching privates is important for like an on-the-ground pole dancer's income as well. If you're not touring a lot, you teach your regular classes, but then taking private students is an important part of our income. So, my whole life basically revolves around that studio. So if it ever goes, what am I going to do? No, if it ever goes, I'll be fine. But I don't enjoy the touring lifestyle. I enjoy reaching the destination and meeting all the new students and seeing a new studio or 10 or 20 new studios. I like that part. I like arriving.
Yeah.
So every time I arrive at a new studio, I'm like, hooray! See what their setup is like, meet the studio owner in person, because sometimes you only get to speak over email and you finally meet them, and that's nice. Or you know them on Facebook and you finally meet them, and it's like, no, it's like meeting a friend almost.
Yeah.
Meeting all of their students and, teaching new people. Some of the students you're going to know from Facebook as well. So it's kind of like reaching a new studio every time you finally get there after getting on and off a bus and a plane and a train. Yeah. That's amazing. But the actual travel part of touring is fucking tough.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll do little tours, but big ones, it's not for me. I'm too much of a sook.
I respect that, and I completely understand that. And so you do, we said before that you've done like a lot of competitions though, and that you seem like really well versed in that. And I'm sure that you, in a lot of your one-on-ones and your privates, you are kind of training people in stage performance and things like that. So like, can we talk about that? Like, what do you think makes you so successful on stage when performing with pole? And like, what's some advice for people like maybe who are starting out, and how have you even evolved? Like when you first started competing, like now you've probably learned so much along the way.
So I think, all right, well, training people for competition it's fun and it's interesting and it's challenging. It's challenging because you're constantly asking yourself what sits well on another person. So when you train yourself, you're focusing solely on yourself and what sits well on you. And that's been most of my experience is training myself, because I haven't had any coaches up to this point.
Oh, wow.
So I of course have done many workshops. Like whenever someone comes into town, if I'm here, I am in their class. And we get some beautiful dancers through Melbourne. We're lucky like that. So we've had a lot of great people come through, and whenever they're here, I take their class. But outside of attending workshops, I've always coached myself and trained myself, and I haven't had a coach up to this point. So the real challenge with coaching other people, that being the case, is that I'm so used to working with my own movement that the challenge is always really settling into another person's movement and really trying to focus on them and see what sits on them. So that's the most interesting part about coaching other people for competition, I think. And you asked me why I've been so successful. Well, sometimes when I watch the videos, I don't know. But when I watch my videos, I'm like, oh, why? I get told a lot that, and it's such a silly word, but I get told a lot that I'm unique or that I have a style of my own. And I think a lot of the people who are self-taught, because starting where I started and teaching myself by and large means that I am self-taught. Most of the people who are self-taught have really, really had to settle in and dig into their own style of movement. Because what choice do you have? For my first 4 years in pole, I was alone in the studio. I didn't even have another teacher teaching with me. So it's like an endless navel gaze.
Yeah, that's so funny. We just talked about this with Bailey Day, who had the exact advice when she was saying for, how she came into her own. She was like, I taught myself and I was by myself in the studio. So I was doing things that I wasn't necessarily mimicking others. And she said that that's advice. Like if you want to kind of get to the next level, like just try leaving the studio or doing things like not looking at other people for a little bit. So that's kind of like, you're the second person to say that in a few weeks. So there's something to that.
I think there is something to that. Yeah, definitely. And at one time in Australia, we have this amazing thing called the East Coast Pole Cruise. Cool. It is a cruise ship that leaves Sydney and sails around the Pacific Islands for 8 days. And on the cruise, they run a whole bunch of pole dancing. It's a huge cruise ship.
I want to do this. I've never heard of this. What?
Yeah, the East Coast Pole Cruise. It's a pole camp, basically, but it's on a cruise ship.
And you get to have some fun, I'm assuming, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So I've taught on the East Coast Pole Cruise twice now. And on my first go, I was hosting a workshop which ended up being like a big round table discussion. It was an off the pole workshop. Okay. So they have on the pole workshops and off the pole workshops. Oh. So I was teaching / hosting an off the pole workshop called Character and Performance for Pole Dancers. And there were no poles in the room. So it ended up being a round table discussion. And something that surprised me is I was asking the group, I asked people to pair up, and in pairs I wanted them to discuss with each other what they think their personal style is. What is their movement footprint or imprint? What is the impression their movement gives? What are 3 words they would use to describe their own personal movement? And in pairs, they were to discuss that with each other, and then we could discuss it with the group. And at least 60% of the group came back with, oh, I don't know. I don't know what, I don't know. I don't know if I have a personal style of movement. I've never thought of that before. Is that important? So
wow.
in terms of, and from that, I had like an Oprah moment. I was like, Jesus Christ. In terms of competition and dance full stop, I think you have to know what your personal movement go-to or style or comfort zone or imprint or notion of self in terms of your movement. You have to know what it is. And that's always one of my primary pieces of advice for people who ask me about competing. When they're like, I'm thinking of competing, it's always, you have to know yourself. You have to know how your body likes to move and how you are as a dancer before you can put anything on stage. Or what you put on stage is either a mess or it's derivative.
So smart. How would you describe yours? What's the answer for Lisa D?
Oh, my natural style of movement is very instinctive. Because I'm not a trained dancer, I rely a lot on flow, so on feel and sensation. So I need to feel the music I'm dancing to really deeply. Otherwise, I can't move to it because my movement vocabulary is not that of a trained dancer. My movement style is mobile. I'm not flexible, but I'm mobile. Okay. It's fluid. Again, I'm not super flexible, but I'm fluid, and it's creative.
Good. I think, and you nailed it. Like, you know yourself well. So I think that's a good exercise for people listening. Like, take the time to kind of dig into that, because I think that can also inform not even just the classes you take, but like maybe you can stop beating yourself up a little bit. Like, man, like, okay, like I just can't do this move. Well, it's because that's not my style of dance. I'm not a flexy dancer. So you can kind of like accept and just more excel at what you want to focus on, you know? So
yeah, you can specialize.
Yeah. I agree with that. So that's great advice, Lisa. I like it. It's like you're a professional or something.
And I think when you specialize too, like when you specialize, you've got to keep growing as well.
Yes.
So that's one of the big challenges too, because you know how you love to move, and then you've got to balance that with pushing yourself to grow outside those parameters. And you were saying just a second ago about people beating themselves up like I can't get that move and it doesn't sit well in them. That's something really strongly evident with competitive pole dancers. Yeah. Low-level pole dancers who are just newbies and they're babies and they're coming in for their first classes, they can be self-critical in a way like, oh, I'm not strong enough, oh. But you encourage them and you're like, look, stick with it, you'll learn, don't worry, let your body take this in. Yeah. And their attitude to it is, by and large, it's positive. They have like trust in the process that yes, they'll get stronger and yes, they'll improve. But I find the higher level and the competitive pole dancers are so insanely self-critical that it's exhausting.
That's a good way to put it.
I mean that in all seriousness.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, they're like, oh my God, I'm criticizing myself because I can't get this move because it doesn't sit well on them. Yeah. That process is fucking non-stop with competitive pole dancers, and I often tell them, just give yourself a fucking break.
Yeah.
Calm down. The negativity is not going to help. I mean, we all fall victim to it, but it doesn't help.
Yeah, especially when you're competitive or high level, like you got there because you're probably like a very, intense trainer and wanting to be at that higher level. So it's kind of hard to like remove that self-criticism, but you kind of have to have that other perspective of like, yeah, but I can do this thing that I do really well and some people struggle with. And it's like, if we could all do everything well, then that would be really fucking boring. So
I know. And we'd all be Marlo.
Yeah.
She's the least boring person in the world, but if we could all do everything well, we'd all be Marlo. Yeah.
Yeah, there are always exceptions to the rule, right? So, but yeah, that's great advice. And I think another thing I wanted to ask you, like on this topic, is the longevity. Like you do have longevity in pole, and training people, you probably do come across people who aren't training correctly, or who are like injuring themselves early, or pushing too hard, or maybe just not training properly. What's your insight on that?
So I do have longevity, but I have been pretty grievously injured a few times.
What happened?
So many things. Being self-taught, no one's looking out for you. Mm-hmm. So, and no one's teaching you. And there wasn't even YouTube. I couldn't even go online and look up simple ways to rehabilitate a shoulder. It's the physio. You got to go to the physio or nothing. Like I didn't have any assistance. Now I'm a Pilates instructor. Uh-huh. That's another thing I teach. So now I'm a Pilates instructor. So I go, oh no, it's hurt. Oh, I'll fix. But back in the day, I subluxed, like minor dislocated my right shoulder 4 or 5 times. Which is now it's completely rehabbed and it feels amazing, thank God. But that caused me a lot of troubles for a few years on end. Wow. I've had a little bit of trouble with my ribs from Gennaro back in 2012. Popped a rib a little bit. Yeah. And it didn't want to go back into place for quite a while. Quite a while as in a couple of years.
Good Lord.
Yeah. I've torn and tweaked and twinged this and that, all sorts of things over the years. My right hamstring has been a little problem on and off over the years. Again, some pretty focused rehab has got it feeling pretty good. But most parts of the body that you can hurt, I have hurt during the early days of training myself for competition. Mm-hmm. These days I'm right on prehab and rehab, thank God. And the competition girls at my home studio, they're very, very, very responsible. Most of them have suffered an injury or two as they've gone up the levels in pole dancing. Pretty much all of them have been pole dancing for, I think, 5+ years. I believe the shortest term is 5 for those girls. So they've come through the mid-levels and they've perhaps injured themselves a little bit. So now they're really responsible. What was the question?
Yeah, I pretty much you answered it. It's kind of like live and learn is almost your response. Like, I just think it's inevitable that people get really into pole and want to advance quickly and aren't necessarily like working with a team. Because I always say, like, this is an athletic pursuit and it's not. And if you're on a sports team, you have this coach and then you have the trainer and then you have the people that give you the ice bath after or whatever. That's not like, you don't have this team around you in pole, unfortunately. So but you're being just as physical on your body, you know?
Oh, God, yeah.
So maybe that'll happen eventually where it grows to that state. I don't know. But like, yeah, so it's kind of like you're inflicting this very like difficult physical activity on your body, but you're not rehabbing correctly, or you're not even treating your muscles correctly or the movement correctly. So sounds like...
And you're not... Yeah. And you're not cross-training and prehabbing.
That was going to be my next thing, the Pilates. Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's smart.
Yeah. When I was leaving the office job, I'm always doing things in blends. So I quit the masters and got the office job until I could blend in enough pole income without being a studio owner. Mm-hmm. So I got the office job until I could blend in enough pole income. And then as I was leaving the office job, I wanted to blend in the Pilates so as I moved into more full-time pole, I could prehab and rehab myself and my students. So I took the Pilates certificate in 2014, okay. I think. The years just blend into one another.
We'll say a few years ago, give or take.
And it's been so helpful and so wonderful. It's so helpful, yeah. So yeah, for the higher level girls, they get a little bit of we don't do a focused Pilates session, but they get a little bit of prehab or rehab style Pilates based stuff to work with, just to keep them on track. Yeah. I do actually, like, disturbingly, and it's always the way it is, I see more injuries coming from the lower and mid-level girls who, just like you said, they want to advance quickly. Mm-hmm. It's true. So they come in, they're a beginner, okay, they're good, they learn to climb the pole, they get their inside leg hang, outside leg hang as they move up through the levels, and then they get confident, really confident, and then they get on YouTube. And we're in their ear like, no, you need to, do your exercises, go slow, do it on both sides, focus on this, focus on that. We're telling them how to engage, where to engage, body placement. We're lecturing them nonstop on the whats and the hows. Mm-hmm. But once they get up a little bit of confidence and they open YouTube, 2 weeks later they roll back into the studio and they're like, oh, I've just got a sore shoulder. I'm really sore in my rib. I think I tore my hamstring. And I'm like, what are you doing? So it's the mid-level girls who are the troublesome bunch in terms of injuries. And there's nothing you can do about it, because you lecture them nonstop and you teach them the right ways to stay safe on the pole, but they're not always at your studio. Yeah. They're at home, or they're at another studio doing open practice time where they just go wild and they come back and they're fucked.
It's that live and learn thing that they haven't done yet.
Yeah, but they don't have the excuse because they have the coaches on their ass about how to do it right. What's their excuse?
They're just excited. And you know what? I think, like, especially if you don't have a history in dance or athletics or something like that, like, I feel like, I did say, track, and I did soccer and basketball. I did all those things, right? There was never
what were your track events?
Oh, I ran the 3,200. I was a distance runner. But there was never like, oh, if you work harder, you're going to get like super injured like you will on a pole. You know what I mean? Kind of like, we worked really hard. There was not that, like, it happened. But my experience was I never got injured enough in sports that I kind of knew before, like, oh, what it was like to actually chain on a metal apparatus. So we kind of have, going through the system, like, yeah, just work harder, you'll get better, and then your time goes down, or you score more goals, or whatever, So it could be just that experience too, not knowing, like, oh, this is different because of this metal thing, and because of your, it's more like gymnastics, I guess.
Oh God, yeah. And you're taking generally it's grown women, and we have boys at bottoms up, thank God. So it's grown women and some grown men. Yeah. And if they don't have a background in gymnastics or dance, you're trying to teach grown, unprepared people how to do gymnastics. Yeah. And that's quite the learning curve. Yeah. It's and their strength, I find their strength improves, their strength outpaces their technique in a sense. So, you get a grown woman and she can't quite climb the pole yet. She hasn't quite got the strength. Within a few weeks, let's say, or maybe a couple of months, she'll have the strength to climb the pole. But that doesn't mean she'll have the technique to do a great inverted straddle. But she'll begin trying.
That's true, because you don't know, like, you have to engage your shoulder, or you have to... I don't teach, so I don't really know the correct thing, but but you're right. You don't know where and how to engage, how to hold yourself, what to do, but you see it on YouTube and you go, well, look, this chick just climbs the pole and then she goes upside down, so I'm going to do that because I can climb the pole really well now. Yeah. So it sounds like your advice is don't try to rush too quickly, and that to, like, make sure that you're learning the technique. It's not just having the strength to do something. It's knowing, like, hand placement and body placement and engagement, and also cross-train, maybe in something like Pilates. Yes. Yeah, get on the Pilates. It's amazing. It's great. It's low impact, but it is difficult. Mm-hmm. What else can I say about it? Get on it. It's great. Yeah. I've been hearing that come up more and more in the pole community, so I think people are getting wise to it. Yeah, I think so. And we were talking earlier about how like, I just love following you on social media and how, like, you always have a lot of good insight on things. And I think one thing we were saying was the Twisty Grip. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so let's...
Yeah. See, I love Twisty Grip, like, and I don't, okay, so there are some people who just don't love it, full stop, but the look it can give on the pole, its usefulness through transitions can't be denied. Like, it can give a beautiful look through many shapes. It can get you twizzling around, like wrap and unwrap via Twisty Grip. You know, you can get that twizzling look. It's beautiful. Yeah. But yeah, seeing it be taught as the first handspring in lots and lots of studios it's really, really troubling. Like, you can't. I see a lot of people. In fact, most of the people I know who sustain a shoulder injury have sustained it because of twisty gripping before they're ready to be able to twisty. So I'm a big believer in teaching the split and cup grip handsprings first when your students are ready to handspring, obviously. So they're at the appropriate level and they're ready to handspring now, or ready to prep for handsprings. I really do think we should be prepping them in split grip and cup grip before we begin getting them up into twisty grip handsprings. There's just no way we're supposed to internally rotate that far, the amount of torque on the joint, and then hang our full weight from that. It's actually not even a motion I think that humans are supposed, if you believe in supposed to do, full stop, let alone launch into it before you can actually successfully lift through a split grip handspring. I feel fairly strongly about that one, but it's contentious because students want to be able to handspring, and there is a massive financial imperative. Like, studios need to get students in through the door and keep students. If you've got a studio 3 kilometers away from you who has their level 5 students handspringing in twisty grip and placing photos all over social media, like big celebration posts, they got the party hat emoji, everyone's high-fiving. They're all posting videos where hilariously someone does a funny bum dance across the camera to celebrate. You know, everyone's like, celebration dance. So all these girls are twisty grip handspringing in level 5 and all their friends are celebration dancing and they're all having big kisses and hugs. And then the studio 3 kilometers away at level 5, those girls are not anywhere near handspringing. Their teacher is telling them, in level 7, you'll begin learning to split grip handspring. The students won't stay. They just fuck off.
And it's like, no shade on people who celebrate their feats and pull. Like,
I love that shit.
Celebrate,
God.
but like, then, you know, is their post 2 weeks later, like, out for 3 months because my shoulder's fucked up now?
Yeah. It's more like their post. It's more like their post 12 months later is. So I'm preparing for my first competition, but I have absolutely awful shoulder injuries going on. Help, anyone? Does anyone have the name of a good physiotherapist or osteo? Prepping for this first comp, and my right shoulder just can't do it. And I'm like, well, yeah, but oh yeah, celebrating your achievements on Facebook, absolutely. As a platform for community and for support and for enjoying each other's achievements, it can't be beaten. It's amazing. So yeah, totally for the party hat emoji.
Yes. So just to be clear, Lisa's not anti-party hat emoji, okay?
I am pro party. I have 4 party hats around me right now. No, it's a tissue. Here we go.
We could use our imagination. But like, that's not the, it shouldn't be at the expense of safety, or at, you know, you don't need a new achievement every week, and you don't need to get the handspring before you have that party hat ready at the time when you're ready to actually do the handspring safely and correctly. Well,
the onus isn't on the student in that regard. So those students, and I feel one of the things is it's a feeling of I feel sorry for students in some ways, because those people celebrating that handspring, they're basically doing so innocently because their teacher is telling them, you're ready for this. It's time. They believe you. Mm-hmm. So your teacher is telling you are ready for this. It's time. You'll love it. See that beautiful shape, that handspring. You're ready. Let's do it. Yeah. Set up like this. Okay. We engage like this. You know, you can teach it as well as you like, but if a student isn't preconditioned for it, it doesn't matter. If they're not conditioned and ready for that shape, it doesn't matter how well you teach it.
Yeah.
So the students believe the teacher who's telling them it's time, you're ready. But the studio that's telling them that is under the same financial pressure to keep their students as all the other studios. There's pressure all the way down. So it's like, it's a, what do you do?
Yeah.
What can you do? The studio who's like, we're not teaching that move till level 7. It's not safe for your shoulders. This and that, this and that, this and that. You need more time, preconditioning before you can get into that internal rotation and load into it. The studio that's telling their students that, their students may not necessarily want to wait. They might leave. Where does that leave the studio owner? Like who pays the rent? Like it's kind of trouble. It's a bit dodgy across the board. If we could get every studio to agree to teach their split grips or cup grips first, well, that would be a different kettle of fish. That'd be amazing. Then you would see the girls not in level 5, but in level, let's say 7, celebrating their first split grip handspring. And then, it'd be a whole different kettle of fish.
That's a good message, though, of like, responsibility as teachers and being more like aware of like what you're enabling your students to do. I mean, students have to, I think students have to take self-responsibility too. Like I was in a workshop a couple weeks ago and they were working on handsprings and I was like, I don't do handsprings. Like, I just don't. I have a bad shoulder from fucking it up years ago in pole. I'm just not going to do it. So it's like, guys, if you're hurting, like not everyone does handsprings or like not everyone does every move. You have to take personal responsibility for your own body of like, if that hurts every time, stop doing it.
Absolutely. And these days, with how broad our performance spectrum is in pole, you can get on stage and you can perform at a high level without being able to do a handspring. And that's a fact. You can do a stunning art piece with genuinely difficult, complicated, impressive movements, tricks, shapes, positions, choreography in it without ever once doing a handspring or moving through a handspring position. So
know your body. That goes back to like also knowing your style and like understanding what works for your body, and focus on that. And because no one wants to get injured and no teacher wants that responsibility on them of someone injuring themselves during their class. I'm sure that has to be awful. So
it's terrible and it happens. Mostly because we're teaching an acrobatic sport and accidents happen. Like you can prep and you can set up your very best, but if you slip, you slip and accidents happen. So that's really painful in class when a student hurts themselves. I hate it. But it happens.
It's inevitable. And then one other thing I wanted to touch on about, about social media in general. We were talking about how, again, I'm going to put all of your social media links in the notes so people can find you and follow if they're not already. But like, what has been your experience? Is there any other issues that you on social media you notice since it seems like you've been in the industry pre-social media, now during social media, seeing the explosion, seeing things. Is there anything else you want to kind of share with us that could be a bit insightful?
No pressure. No pressure.
Yeah.
Pearls of wisdom, no pressure though. I joined Facebook, I think in 2011, I believe, and our industry has absolutely exploded. And on the one hand, it's like, thank God, because it's giving people careers. Like, access to social media is giving us careers. And I'm someone who has personally benefited from that. Like the ability to connect with the community, the ability to connect, to share, to actually form relationships in a real sense, both in an industry networking sense and in a real person-to-person sense, has been unbelievably fostered by social media. And it has made me able to have a career in pole dance, basically. So that's amazing. Yeah. And then you've got the flip side to that coin, where pole isn't anymore a personal niche activity where it's like your own secret world. It's now a huge public world. And with that comes the marketeers and the products and the marketing and the commercialization of the industry. on the one hand, that's unbelievable because a lot of it's female entrepreneurship. And how important is that? Like, it's massively important. And well, that's it. I can't really overstate that. It's massively important. Female entrepreneurship and the availability of business options and entrepreneurial options for us women. Yeah, it's huge. And then on the flip side of that is how commercial do we become? Like, every single time we get up to train, do we say, these are my pants, this is my top, this is my this is my that, this is my pole grip, this is my this, music by such. Yes, people deserve credit for their creations, but it's like we were saying ages ago about, you and I were chatting earlier about the yoga industry, where what is or can be a deeply personal practice that connects you to your own energy and your own movement can become a display of expensive leggings. Yeah. And that's, it's like, which for me is sometimes depressing. And sometimes for me personally, it can be an ostracizing factor because I have never swum very well in the stream of popular trend. Like, I was, in high school, there's that one sad person that everyone makes fun of, and that person eats lunch in the library alone every day while everyone else plays. That was literally me.
What? I don't believe it.
No, actually. Yeah, right. You can not believe it, but I literally spent every single day of my first year of high school eating lunch alone in the library, because what's popular and what's hot and what everyone's buzzing about has never sat well with me. Mm-hmm. So when every Facebook post can sometimes be, oh my God, guys, hug, hug, love, love, kiss, kiss. I'm so in love with my new XYZ apparel. It's the best and I can't get enough of it. But every single post is like that. I'm like, is dance just a business? And then on the flip side, well, people need their money to live and people need to run their businesses. So there is no easy answer to that. Yeah. The thing is, sometimes I grow tired, and then other times I am able to acknowledge the value in the growth of business in our industry, and that is so vital for our industry to grow, the growth of business. I guess all I need is balance.
Yeah. No, I think that's like, hey, that was I'm happy that you said that, because it's not like necessarily popular opinion, but like we like to talk about all different topics here, and I don't think we've ever talked about on the podcast. And like, obviously, like, I sell shit, like, and I have girlfriends with brands that sell shit, and like, I want you to buy my shit, poleparlour.com/shop. Like, that's, and it gives me the ability to do this podcast, and like, some people have been able to, pursue pole having their business, and we need booty shorts, and like, I'd rather give that money to say Bad Kitty than Nike, because like, they're supporting our industry. So that's cool. But let's also not try to, I guess, just focus on the image of it all. And
yes, the image. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like that's the message. Don't let that overshadow the art of it, or the athleticism of it, or like the dance itself. Yeah. Yes. Balance. And like you said, you've got friends who have their own apparel, or who sell things, and you sell things. And I'm a brand ambassador for X-Pole. And periodically pole clothing companies send me things to wear. And, who doesn't want beautiful clothes? Yeah. Beautiful, functional, high quality pole wear. Yeah. So it's the two sides of the coin. Or no, it's like a 10-sided coin. There's entrepreneurship and industry building, which is vital for our industry and necessary. There's the women who work hard in our industry, who build their careers, and that's unbelievably important and vital for our industry. There's those two things really: entrepreneurship,
women who build their businesses in our industry, the fact that we require products, it's not like we don't need anything.
Correct.
It's not like you can just wander out into the forest and go, well, I'm pole dancing. You need things to wear, grip aids to use so you don't fall on your head. You need poles. We literally need items, so supply and demand. And yeah, it's way better to buy within the industry, obviously, to support our industry and the people in it. And then on the flip side of that is when things become overly image conscious and you start to wonder if you can keep swimming in the stream if for some of your videos you're literally just going to wear your undies. Are you allowed to do that and still have a popular presence if sometimes it's just your undies? Do you know what it's balance. It's balance.
So what are your plans, goals moving forward? Are you anything worth discussing, or are you kind of like you feel like you're really in your flow of like getting like your solid teaching down and still performing? And
so over the next while I am slowing down with comps, that's for sure.
Okay.
But I'm still applying to a couple here and there. So there may or may not be some competitions for me this year. I've been on the fence about whether I would compete this year. So I've been like deciding, do I want to compete or do I only want to perform? So I think I might crack out a comp or two this year, just for fun.
Shits and giggles.
Yeah. It's not even that much of a fun process. It's such a hard process.
Sounds really hard.
But but I'm so driven towards it. Why? Every time I get close to a competition. I like the low pressure stage. Okay. The high pressure stage, I do not like. I crumble almost, but not quite. So it really takes me down to like sinew every time I get on a high pressure stage, but I'm really driven towards it. Something, I don't know what's going on with me there. I need a psychologist to tell me, So I might crack out a comp or two this year. And I'm loving the teaching. Just going to keep on teaching and workshopping. It's like when you're kind of pretty embedded in your lifestyle or your job, it's fairly routine like any job is. Teach, coach, workshop, perform, comp, repeat.
I was going to say, it sounds like you've worked really hard to get into a really nice place now where you have this professional career that's like really balanced and
trying to be balanced. Failing often at balance, reaching for balance.
So good for you. What a nice place to be where you can kind of like enjoy your career, without driving yourself crazy, flying all around the world and having to compete when you're not really feeling it. So
yeah, thanks. Although if you go long enough without competing, that can be a problem as well sometimes. Okay. So there's always I think in our industry, you don't just reach a point and then stay there. It's a constant work to stay where you want to be.
Yeah,
so
because the industry is growing, so
yes,
it's definitely
it's growing and it's moving, and so there is constant work to stay on your game. Yeah. But that's okay. It's that pressure factor, that specific pressure factor is something I enjoy. I need the pressure behind me to push me to stay on my game, to keep me excited and involved and motivated and excited.
It keeps it fun.
So, fun, pressure, challenge.
Cool. Yeah. That's a great attitude to have about it.
Thanks.
Yeah. So let's jump into the questions I ask everyone closing out the interview. Right. Who is Lisa D's pole crush?
I read this. You sent me this question. I read it and I was like, it's impossible.
It is. You're allowed to
can I have
people.
Many?
You can.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. So one of my very first couple of pole crushes were JK from America.
Yes.
Amir. Yeah.
So
Rudy Manure, a Chinese pole artist from Brisbane. Felix Kane from Sydney, Australia, And then came along Natasha Wang and Stephen Retchless and then Marlowe and then Ken a couple of years after that, Ken Cow. I actually don't know. I've never heard him say his last name.
I've always said Cow.
I've only read it.
You're right. I have
Cow?
no idea.
Yeah, I've never heard him speak it. Then Yvonne Smink, of course, everyone loves her. There have been so many over the years. Heidi Coker, Bendy Kate. But actually, there's at least 20 to 30 more. So I'm just omitting.
That's just a sampling.
Yeah, omitting the bulk of my crushes because
it's a hard.
It would take forever, and yeah. So Nadia, Sharif, it's just there are, and they all represent something different. Like they all bring something different. There's the technicians and there's the wild ones and there's the sexy ones and there's the hyper, well, they're all strong. There's the hyper strong ones. There's the, the more dynamic ones, the more fluid ones. There's something they all share is charisma and stage presence, because I admire that so much. Whether they know it or not, when they're on stage, I feel like they're magnetic and my eyes are just stuck on them. And that's an individual thing, like how I perceive someone to have stage presence is different to how someone else perceives them to have stage presence. So for me, those individuals all have an utterly magnetic presence. Whether they're doing a show that where they hit everything and it's like A+ all the way through, or whether they're doing a more casual show, it's just more of a comfortable performance thing, an easy thing. No matter what they're doing, I'm glued to them. So it's that.
Yeah, that X factor, you can't name it, but they got it.
They got it. Yeah.
Nice. That's a good bunch there. And yes, it's a difficult question. So I think you did a great job of rounding that out. And
Thanks.
how would you like to see the pole community evolve over the next 5 years?
Just grow and grow. Back to the business and entrepreneurship thing. More and growing. And I would love to see something that would be beneficial for our industry is for pole to begin to be as accepted in the corporate arena as other aerials are. Yeah. So there are a lot of, for example, corporate gigs, nightclub and corporate gigs for various aerial apparatuses, but pole is still not quite in the mix with that. Yeah. So it's in one sense we're aerialists, but our ability to make money from performance is largely confined to our own industry. Whereas for other aerialists of a certain skill level, their ability to earn a living off their apparatus has all of these avenues into the corporate world, because a lot of corporate gigs, they hire aerialists on the regular. A lot of clubs, they hire aerialists on the regular, and that's less so for pole dancers. So I'd love to see us be able to branch out into corporate gigs more. Another avenue to earn a living from your work. Yeah. That would be lovely. But inside the industry, I just want to see more growth for as long as it's sustainable, because it has to be sustainable. There has to be the student body, enough of a student body to sustain the businesses. Yes. So I would love to see, more products available to us, more kinds of grip, more pole camps and events, but only as many as we can support. So growth, more students through the doors of studios, leading to more products and events available to us, but circling back around, all in balance. So I don't feel like my whole news feed is just advertising, an ad, one massive ad. More gigs and more growth. Corporate sponsorship is something that's important. You mentioned earlier on that Michelle Shimmy made an approach and they were like, yeah, cheers, nah. Yeah. Which is, so corporate sponsorship for our events, we can only imagine the kind of events we could run if there was serious money and serious coverage behind them, and leading on to how many more people we'd be getting through the doors of pole studios. Yeah, it's all tied together. It's all tied in. So, moving into the corporate world, funneling, like heading through into sponsorship from large companies, and Red Bull would be perfect.
I know.
Like in that extreme sports angle, I don't know what they're thinking either. Yeah, so yeah, the corporate world getting on board a bit to help us pack out our studios with excited new students and grow our industry.
Yeah, agree. Yeah. Okay, so I am going to have all your social media links and everything in the show notes. Is there anything that you have coming up that you want to share, or just like come see you at Bottoms Up in Melbourne, or?
Come see us at Bottoms Up in Melbourne. I am developing a little business. It's a secret, but I'm going to say I'm developing a little secret business that's going to be using, of course, social media as one of its big platforms. So cool. Get on board with some advertising from me.
See, just proof that
I'm a hypocrite.
No,
Help
just
me.
Proof that you are not anti, that you are completely just in favor of balance. So
I'm pro. Yeah. We need balance, but we need women entrepreneurs, and we need business in our industry. So anyway, there's going to be a little, yeah.
So when can we expect that?
Since it is my own business and I am famously unreliable in some ways, I will say in the next 3 to 7 months. Cool. 3 months if I can take my finger out of my butt and move myself. But knowing who and how I am, more likely closer to the 5 to 7 month mark from now for my little launch. It all depends on me because, and that can be tough because I can be it's difficult for me to self-motivate sometimes. So it's in the works and soon. Okay. And now that I've said it on this podcast, I'm going to try and make it closer to the 3 to 5 month mark rather than the 7 month mark.
Yes, please, because I'm curious. So we'll all be following you to and waiting for the announcement.
Yeah.
And so good luck with that. I can't wait to see what it is. And before I let you go, though, can you leave us with an empowering quote or message or anecdote just to sign off with?
Something that I think often when I'm trying to choreograph a show or create a stage show, and I've got some kind of idea in mind for how I want it to be, but it's a little bit different to usual. Something my mother used to say a lot when I was a child has stuck with me for my entire life, and it is, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got.
There you go.
So it's just, take risks and be brave. Don't worry about failing.
You can't see change if you don't make change. Yeah, I like that. So that's great advice. Yeah, and you do that, and you're always growing, and so nice way to sign off, Lisa. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was so fun talking with you.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely.
Oh, you're welcome. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Pole Parlour podcast. Want more? Visit poleparlour.com for show notes and to link to the Facebook group where you can connect with other poloholics and continue the conversation. Listen to past episodes and subscribe to new episodes on the website, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud. Lots of love, babes. Thanks for listening.